This vehicle is the Season Pass rank 75 reward that we can actually pick up in the game, and there's a reason why you're actually going to want to get this vehicle. And this one, which is the tier 7 Krupp steyr waffentrager, which is a German tier 7 tank destroyer, is significantly better than when I last used the vehicle, and there's a few reasons for that in the game, and it's primarily down to the fact that this now has 280 alpha damage alongside a lot of the other German 88s that were actually updated recently. And with this tank having a very good DPM of nearly 3,300, it's really easy to actually farm up a ton of damage in this little tier 7. And once I kind of said it was a bad version of a Borsig because it had such low alpha damage where yes, you could deal with a lot of medium tanks, but it really relied on basically never getting spotted in the game and playing a much more passive role than it can do now, because you can counter a lot of those heavy tanks now because, you know, you can fire off 2 shells with a 5.1 second reload, so within 5.1 seconds of first spotting someone, you can deal 560 damage, which is more damage than the majority of heavy tanks at tier 7, tier 8 can even do, and when you're doing it so quickly, you're going to be able to do it before they ever reload, and you can get behind cover now. So even when you come into those closer quarter engagements that do happen, it's really not that bad. The only real bad thing about even being in those engagements is you only have 800 hit points, which does suck, I'm not going to lie to you. But there's a real good chance that if you're using the view range and the camo of the vehicle that you never get spotted anyway, and you can get a ton of assistance damage, which does now make it like a brilliant version of a Borsig, and at tier 7 that is. It definitely doesn't get the alpha damage, and you don't get the option of being able to use a 155mm, but this 8.8 is a solid, really amazing accuracy main armament that can be really good to use. It also gets 8 degrees of gun depression. The travel speed of this tank is not terribly slow. It isn't by any means a fast tank destroyer, going 35 kilometers an hour top speed forward, but it also has 15.7 horsepower to ton ratio, which is okay. It's nothing spectacular, but it's definitely okay, which is going to allow you to move around the battlefield and stay hidden as well. Now, one thing that makes this tank absolutely crazy good is the fact that you can use a camo build on it. When you are hidden with the tank, it's amazing, and now that we have that 280 damage, even when we do go into those closer quarter engagements, you can still do okay. It doesn't feel like you're completely mismatched when you come up against the heavy if you play the tank correctly. And although they can fire HE because the armor of the tank is garbage, yes, absolutely garbage, it is going to be able to at least do something, and in most cases if you play very, very well, you can just completely demolish heavy tanks just flat out. So in terms of loadout wise, we have gone with the advanced optics, advanced concealment, and running it as a camo build with advanced loader for that increased DPM, as I would recommend, since you're relying on that DPM to outperform a lot of other tanks. And because you have that 5.1 second reload, you can retrack tanks very quickly, you can get them locked down in place, you can use the enhanced combat rations to gain an additional boost to the DPM and the reload speed so that you're even faster in those cases where maybe you first D-track an opponent and you want to go for a second D-track on someone. So it works really, really well in that department. So I cannot stress enough how good this tank really feels right now, and it's definitely got that big change with the alpha damage has completely changed my opinion of the tank. It was still good, it could have good games, but it just feels way more consistent now, and I think that is a big thing for a tank like this in the game. Of course, equipment isn't everything. If you want to fully max this tank out, you'll be wanting to run a camo build and accuracy with DPM build on your crew skills. So you can see here we have Born Leader, and then of course you're going to want to have Sixth Sense. Sixth Sense should be your first perk, as it is just one of the most influential perks in the game, and when you're running a spotting build, especially light tanks, everything like that, it is imperative that you have it, because that way you know when you're spotted. When you're in a non-armored vehicle, you want to know as soon as you're spotted so you can find the nearest piece of cover to avoid being hit, and also the fact that you'll then know if anyone's outspotting you, and the fact that if someone has outspotted you, then that is going to mean that you have essentially worse view range, and therefore the only tanks on the enemy team are going to be tanks with good view range. And if you know what those tanks actually are, you can pretty much work out exactly what the tank is, and from that you can outplay it in a wide variety of scenarios by exploiting the weaknesses of those tanks. It is the most influential perk, and it also stops you from going around a corner without knowing what's there and getting hit. So any perk or whatever that actually allows you to avoid damage entirely is the biggest upgrade that you could possibly have on your crew. Born Leader giving you the improvements to skill effectiveness, so for every 10% of a crew skill buff that you get, it will give you an additional 1%, because it's 10% of, for example, 10% of the green thumb would give me 11% increase to vehicle camo factor when in foliage. That's how it works. And so it gives you a boost to all of your crew skills. It's more effective as you have more crew skills, but even as a standalone, it gives you 10% bonus to your crew effective performance. So essentially that will give you a boost to the reload speed, the tracks, repair speed, that sort of stuff. So a 10% to boost to all of that is amazing. So why would you not actually use that? It's basically like a doubled up vents. That is how it works. Plus you get an additional bonus of 10% increase to all of your other perks. So even as a standalone, if it didn't have the skill effectiveness, this would be my second perk. It is just that good. Then we have ourselves rapid loading for increased DPM, steady aim as for the increased accuracy, and then we've gone for essentially view range and camo perks. One of the biggest things that we did was add in silent driving. This allows us to reduce the effect of moving on blooming out our camo or detectability range. So if you're moving in the game in a tank destroyer, everything except from light tanks, your camo will actually decrease, so you'll be worse off in your camo when you're moving. So if you look on the minimap, you'll see that it'll bloom out bigger when you start to move, and if you don't move, you'll be much smaller of a circle where people can actually spot you. So if we can reduce how much of an impact that's going to have on a tank like this, where we do want to move around the map and get better angles on people, it's very big for our camo. So 55% reduction is a big change, and with Born Leader that increases that effect to 60.5%, which is amazing. Camo expertise for extra camo, situational awareness for more view range, and muffled shot to be able to fire off lots of rounds very quickly. This is probably one of the biggest things for high rate of fire vehicles, because you're firing off a lot more rounds than with a bigger gun. Now the bloom at which you will get spotted is smaller on a smaller gun, but the fact that we can reduce this even more is going to make it a massive improvement, and make it very difficult, even when we're firing, to be spotted than when you're playing in a much higher alpha damage tank. Because you know, if it blooms out to 400 meters with a bigger alpha damage tank, yes, you can reduce it by 35%, but it is still a very big margin anyway. So if this is already pretty low and we're lowering it even further, it just makes camo abuse even better. So yeah, that is kind of what we're going for with this tank. Now you could change out different perks, change it up, maybe you go for movement speed, whatever you want to go, it's fine, but the basis is basically a camo build for a tank like this, same as the Borsig. But in terms of performance, let's jump into a game and stop nattering on about the stats and how you can play the tank. Let's show how you can play the tank. Now then, first up, we have a game on probably one of the least favourite maps for at least this vehicle in particular. It's a town map, and yeah, it probably isn't the map that you want the most when you're playing in a vehicle like this, because it relies upon you know, being more camo stealthy build, and when you're on a town map, something like this, the opportunity for that is much lower. But you can still use this tank very effectively, because it isn't like some of the other camo vehicles where, you know, it has decent camo. This one has incredible camo, to the point where even on smaller maps, things that kind of force you to, you know, play a bit closer to opponents, this still has that a good enough camo where if you find yourself a bush, you can remain undetected even in those scenarios. So straight off the bat, we hit a little T61 or something like that. I can't remember the name of the vehicle. The medium tank, the Chaffee. We hit him for 300, and then we're hitting this Panther for another kind of 300 region. And then, of course, he gets tracked. It's a VK301D, but We are just chunking away hit points here. Unfortunately, terrible aim by me. Yes, I know I have terrible aim as well sometimes, but we managed to hit the front track of the Hellcat 105, get ourselves a good hit onto him and track him and take him out. So very nice in that regard as well. And so all we're really going for here is just remaining hidden. And you can see already we're up to 1400 damage. I don't know what this Cromwell was doing, but throwing himself away. Probably thinking that they'd already won this flank and that there's not a whole lot around. Which, yeah, I mean, I haven't been spotted yet. So that is definitely the case with this tank. You can remain undetected. People don't know that you're around. And you can really effectively remove them quite quickly. But, of course, you don't want to be the first one forward. Because we want to use our great accuracy to snipe from distance and avoid being detected, and of course not hit statues. That would be great as well. Now, in terms of what we do from this kind of standpoint, we go for a little tracking shot on the Craft Panther, which locks him down, and we're going for it again. And in doing so, we're getting assistance damage due to tracking, which if you're going for marks is one of the biggest ways to confidently do that. Although with this tank, you're probably more likely to go for something that actually gets you spotting damage. But that really only comes in the later stages of games. So if we can go for tracking and damage at the same time, which is the pinnacle of kind of dealing damage, because you get repeated damage because they're locked in place, they can't move, and you can repeatedly pen them. That's the ideal scenario. Now you're seeing the pure power of the DPM of this tank. You can see here hitting him constantly and twice between every single one of those shots. Now if we had, for example, 400 alpha, we would have only been able to get one shot off there, 100%. Only been able to get one shot off. So the fact that we have that 5-second reload with the smaller alpha damage than some of the other TDs, you know, the SU-152, we can actually often deal more damage in an engagement because we can lock people down, or we can hit them multiple times every single time that they expose themselves, which is going to give us that best result possible. Now in this game, we've just completely cleared up the enemy flank with basically me and 2 other vehicles once they'd won this kind of side. And even when they'd won it, they had basically thrown themselves away and didn't really spot me until the very end of the game by that M4, which, I mean, pretty much tells you everything you need to know about this tank. And although we don't get any more damage in the game, I think we did a pretty solid game on something that is not really that well suited to a tank like this in Ensk. So yeah, a very good one. I believe it might even be called, is it Ruberg? I don't even know. It's been so long since I've even checked the maps. But we'll find out in a second. So epic victory, we come top on damage by the looks of things, and very decent amount of XP, only a 50% badge, 3.18 thousand damage with 340 assistance. And what we'll actually do is jump ahead into the next game, which was directly after this one. And the next one is Lakeville, a really good map. I think that this is a very good map to have a solid game where maybe we can even get some assistance damage. And because of the fact that it is an encounter battle, if we can get into the middle of the map and spot the enemy team as they're crossing, that is going to give us like the most amount of damage and assistance opportunities. So that's where I'm going to go. Sometimes it really doesn't work if you get someone on the enemy team that just YOLOs, and hence why I'm a little bit cautious as to moving up here. Now sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but more often than not it's usually fine. But it really relies upon you actually tracking someone down, and that is not the tank we wanted to see. It's an Earthshaker. Oh my lord, that does like 480 damage if it's firing its standard rounds. Oh, let's get back away, which we do. And although we should have probably taken a hit or two there by the fact that people were missing, you know, we managed to get away from it, and there you go. So weren't expecting the Earthshaker to be the one pushing up, but he did, and we managed to survive it, so that's fine. And now we get the opportunity to take out these guys who are crossing, obviously going towards the cap. Now here is where this tank is the ultimate vehicle. We've locked the IS down with his tracks, and with the amount of damage and the reload speed, you can see this guy is not having a good day. I mean, it's not the best idea at all to go where he went, so it is his fault in its entirety, but we take him out from full health. So really nice little bonus to our damage there. But yeah, if you're going on the other side, always go behind the hill, never go in front of it because of this exact reason, especially if you're in a slower heavy vehicle. Never cross trying to go the quick way that you might think, because the quick way on World of Tanks is a quick way to the garage, so definitely do not do that. It's always better to take the longer way around most of the time, unless it is a case of you need to get to a cap circle and the only way to go is risking it. Otherwise you'll just lose the game anyway. So yeah, that is basically a caveat, but still 90% of the time you should always take the long way round. So we have got inside of the cap circle, and I'm once again hesitant to push up because we need to think about, well, what is the other tanks doing? Is that Earthshaker still sat on this hill? We find out, no, he's not still sat on this hill, which is perfect, means we can push up a little bit further. And as we do so, we spot the T28 HTC, and the T28 HTC is a good solid vehicle, and he looks pretty close to us, and ooh, he only spotted us when we fired. I was a little bit surprised that he didn't actually spot us sooner, but we managed to hit him here. And so we know he's probably going to be looking at us, and we pull back. And there you go, he whiffs his shot, allowing us to literally sit directly out in front of him, aim for that weak point on either side of the vehicle, and remove him from the game. Now we've got a Comet that we could have hit, but it would have been a lucky one anyway, and we weren't quite aimed in that direction, so unlikely we were going to get any more damage on him. But what we do is see that he's moving backwards, and we get one more into him. So 3.1 thousand damage with 700 assistance damage as well. So you're seeing that even when you play it in a more aggressive role, you really even don't get spotted that much unless someone's very close to you, or like you fire when you're very close to someone. So you combine that all together into a tank like this. I'm starting to really love this tank, and maybe we'll even go ahead and try and 4-mark it, or, you know, at very least go and 3-mark it at some point on a stream maybe. I'm sure you guys would love to see me completely change my mind about people YOLOing me and Hing me to death and me getting triggered. So I'm sure, you know, you can look at that if you wanted to. Of course, I stream on both Twitch and YouTube, so you can find me on either of those. Twitch link should be in the description if you want to follow me on that. But we still managed to pick up just over 3,800 combined damage within this game. A victory nonetheless as well. And we come top of the team with 3,147 damage, 1630 XP, 3 enemies taken out. Very decent game indeed. And yeah, I was pretty happy with the result that we got with the tank. Interested to see what you guys think of a tank like this. Do you enjoy the camo build, the sneaky rolling around, trying to open up different shots from a different map? I feel like that is really where the fun is with these sorts of tanks, and the results that you can have with them when you use them correctly, that is where it's at. And so, yes, this season pass tank was a okay, mediocre vehicle, but with the increased alpha damage, that has changed the tank no end, and it is amazing to play now. So if you have any questions, if you have any queries, maybe you completely disagree with me, let me know in the comments. And of course, like the video if you did, but this one is one to get for sure. Thank you very much, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.